Just before we start, please watch the whole video. It's a long video, but it's so important. You need to hear what is said here. And I'd also like to make the case that this is for sure getting demonetized because we're trying to do real journalism here. CNN, MSNBC, they're never going to tell you this stuff. So please consider supporting the show on patreon.com/papichulamin or dropping a few bucks on PayPal. Anything is truly appreciated. Thank you so much. All right, are you buckled in? Get ready. This is a big one. So WikiLeaks just released the leaked reports from the OPCW, which is the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. This is the watchdog that investigated the chemical gas attack in Duma in Syria last year and published the report saying that Assad used chemical weapons, and this is why the US, UK, France launched airstrikes and rockets at Syria. It turns out the report was bogus. I'm going to go into detail now in a second why the report was orchestrated and manipulated, and we have clear-cut evidence that it was now from WikiLeaks. And then I'm also going to go into why militarily, strategically, this attack made no sense. So right here it says, today WikiLeaks releases more documents showing internal disagreement within the OPCW about how facts were misrepresented in a redacted version of a report on an alleged chemical attack in Duma, Syria in April 2018. Amongst these is a memorandum written in protest by one of the scientists sent on a fact-finding mission to investigate the attack. It is dated 14 March 2019 and is addressed to Fernando Arias, Director General of the organization. Okay, so what they've leaked today is the complaint by one of the inspectors to the Director General of the OPCW, telling him that he is very concerned about the final report that was published because it doesn't match what they found at the site of the chemical gas attack or the alleged chemical gas attack. So he wrote to his boss saying, what you're publishing isn't true. It's not what I found. Matter of fact, he's not the only one. 20 inspectors all expressed their concern with the OPCW report. So 20 people who were charged with investigating this chemical gas attack all wrote saying, what are you doing? This report doesn't match what we found. You're censoring our findings, our conclusions, and completely derailing it to form a new narrative. 20. The aforementioned memo states that around 20 inspectors have expressed concerns over the final fact-finding mission report, which they feel did not reflect the views of the team members that deployed to Duma. Only one member of the fact-finding mission that went to Duma, a paramedic, is said to have contributed to the final version of the report. Apart from that one person, an entirely new team was gathered to assemble the final report, referred to as the FFM core team. So, out of these 20 people who went to Duma to investigate the chemical gas attack, only one of them actually wrote the report. Only one of them, this paramedic, was involved with the final report that was released. They brought in new people who didn't actually visit the site, who didn't actually go to Syria to write this report. What is that? Why did they lock out? Why did they exclude the scientists, the engineers, the experts that they sent to investigate this chemical gas attack from writing the report? This is shady as hell. This new team was staffed with people who had only operated in country X, according to the memorandum. It is not clear what country that refers to, except that it is presumably not Syria. It is possible through only speculation that country X refers to Turkey, as OPCW has sent teams into refugee camps there to interview survivors from Duma. So again, these people, this new FFM core team, the ones who wrote the final report, they didn't go to Syria. They had only worked in Turkey. Turkey referred to as country X in the report. So they had never visited the site, and presumably the only expertise that they have in this matter is that they maybe interviewed some of the victims of the attack. Maybe. This is just speculation. But they didn't go to Syria, they didn't visit Duma, and they have nothing to do with the findings. The author of the memorandum states that he was the one originally tasked with analysis and assessment of the 2 cylinders found on the scene of the alleged chemical attack. This was a task that he undertook in the understanding that he was clearly the most qualified team member, having been to the location in Duma, and because of his expertise in metallurgy, chemical engineering, artillery, and defense R&D. He continues, in subsequent weeks, I found that I was being excluded from the work for reasons not made clear. So the chief expert, the one who was actually given the task of analyzing these gas cylinders that they found at the site of the attack, was excluded from the report. And they wouldn't update him. They wouldn't tell him what was going on with the report. This is the guy who was tasked with analyzing the literal evidence, who was tasked with doing the forensic evidence. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. The author explains that he had frequently asked to be updated on the progress of the final report and to be allowed to review the draft, but he was turned down on both counts. The response was utmost secrecy. So this guy, who is an expert in chemical engineering, in artillery, in defense R&D, the one who was at the site, the one who was given the task to analyze the forensic evidence, was excluded from the report. They wouldn't update him. They wouldn't allow him near it, despite him asking twice. They just shut him out. How do you explain that? That's not transparency. That's corruption. That's malfeasance. There is something afoot here. Once the final report was released on the 1st of March 2019, so this is a year after the fact, April 2018, the US, the UK, France immediately bombed without even having this report. They're just, yeah, we got all we need. Let's go. Once the final report was released on the 1st of March 2019, it became clear that the conclusions of the report had changed significantly in the hands of the new core team that assembled it into its final form. At the conclusion of the in-country activities in the Syrian Arab Republic, the consensus within the FFM team was that there were indications of serious inconsistencies in findings. Okay? So the fact-finding mission, the people who were actually at the site of the alleged attack, the people who went to Duma, the experts who were sent by the OPCW, they said that there were indications of serious inconsistencies in findings of the final report. Basically, that it was a bunch of BS. And it's not what they found. It's been tampered with. It's falsified evidence. Towards the end of the memo, he writes, in conclusion, I must stress that I hold no opinion, interest, or strong views on the technical part of the matter, nor any interest in the political outcomes. My interest is in sound technical rigor. The science, engineering, and facts will speak for themselves. The chief expert who is in charge of analyzing the gas canisters is saying that he and other members of the fact-finding mission are not happy with the final report because it's been doctored. It doesn't match their findings. It's completely inconsistent. And that they have no political bias, but this is simply wrong what they are doing, tampering with the evidence and with the forensics to create something completely falsified and justify Syria being bombed and also pin this fake chemical gas attack on the Syrian government. So this is not one person speaking. These are 20 people. These are the actual experts, the unbiased, transparent team of experts who were sent to investigate. And they're saying that what has been published is not true. It's fake. Another bombshell revelation that came from WikiLeaks just 2 weeks ago on November 23rd is that, again, the final report doesn't match the evidence that they found. The author of the email was a member of that team and claims the redacted preliminary version of the report misrepresents the facts he and his colleagues discovered on the ground. The people who were sent on the fact-finding mission, the experts, are saying that the redacted version of the preliminary report, so this is not the final version, this is the one before, is misrepresenting what they found on the ground. He says this misrepresentation was achieved by selective omission, introducing a bias which undermines the credibility of the report. Further, it is claimed that crucial facts that have remained in the redacted version have morphed into something quite different to what was originally drafted. So what they're saying basically is that they've hidden important facts from this draft, okay? Selective omission. So they've chosen to keep some evidence and hide other parts of the evidence to craft a certain narrative. This is said to have been done at the behest of the Office of the Director General, a post that was held by a Turkish diplomat at the time. Now, That is a huge conflict of interest. To have a Turkish diplomat in charge of a so-called unbiased watchdog sent to Syria to investigate an alleged chemical attack by the Syrian government. You have a Turkish diplomat in charge of that. I mean, this is an enormous mistake. How could you do that? There is going to be a conflict of interest here. The attack in question was widely attributed to the Syrian army, based on reports by rebel forces that were present in Douma at the time, and this assertion was backed up by the United States, the British, and French governments. These three countries carried out airstrikes against Syrian government targets in response on the 14th of April 2018. This was before the fact-finding team had gained access to the site in Douma. The mission there was delayed for nearly 2 weeks by entrenched rebel fighters. The US, the UK, and France, they launched attacks on Syria, on Damascus, if you guys remember. This was 2 weeks before any experts, anyone from the OPCW, was even allowed access to the site in Douma to even investigate. And I remember, you saw my cousin on the show, Ronnie. He was there, man. My family's there. I was talking to my cousins, asking them what's going on, wondering if they're safe. They were there when the Capitol was bombed. Really anxiety-inducing stuff. Upon arrival, the team found much of the physical evidence, including the bodies of the deceased, was no longer available. Rebels claimed the gas came from cylinders dropped from aircraft, clearly implicating Syrian government forces who had complete air superiority. So the rebels are saying that 100% this was done by the Syrian army because they're the only ones who have the skies. They're the only ones with planes. And so they dropped this. This came from them. They're responsible. This is the alleged claim by the rebels. The redacted report seem to support these conclusions, but the author of the released email outlines some specific aspects of it which he considers particularly worrisome. Likely one or more chemicals that contain a reactive chlorine atom. Such chemicals could include the major ingredient of household chlorine-based bleach. Purposely singling out chlorine gas as one of the possibilities is disingenuous. So what they're saying here, what the guy is raising a concern about, is that you can't for sure say that the traces of chlorine found came from chlorine gas. It could have been from chlorine bleach, what you have in your kitchen or your bathroom. And that's what they redacted from the report. That's what they left out, making it look like, yes, this chlorine that we found surely came from chlorine gas. But you don't know that. It also could have come from household chlorine, from stuff you find in swimming pools, cleaning products you buy at the store. That's what the fact-finding mission wrote. And the OPCW removed that. They removed it on purpose to craft a false narrative, to imply that surely this was chlorine gas and that there's no other possibility, to make it look like chemical weapons were used. Now, the redacted report also removed context from a claim in the original draft, which concerned the likelihood of gas having emanated from cylinders found at the scene in Douma. The original text is said to have purposely emphasized that there was insufficient evidence to affirm this being the case. So the scientists, what they wrote in the original draft was that we don't know for sure that this chlorine gas or this chlorine came from the cylinders at the site. We don't know that for sure. And what the OPCW did is omit that. They removed that part. He also cites problems with paragraph in the redacted version, which states, based on the high levels of various chlorinated organic derivatives detected in environmental samples. This is said to overstate the case. According to the email, there were in most cases present only in parts per billion range, which is essentially trace quantities. So what they're saying is the chlorine they found could have come from anywhere because it was in such small amounts. It was in trace quantities. There was insufficient evidence. You couldn't say that a gas attack, a chlorine-based gas attack happened for sure, or that chemical weapons were used for sure, because the forensic evidence didn't indicate that. Therefore, there was insufficient proof of this alleged gas attack by the Syrian government. It's that simple. Insufficient evidence. But the OPCW left that out multiple times here. Multiple times. Multiple instances. They left out the part that says that the gas cylinders, we don't know for sure that chlorine gas or chlorine was emanated from those gas cylinders. They left out the part that says chlorine was only found in trace amounts. They left out the part saying that the chlorine could have come from a bleach product. It could have come from cleaning products, not necessarily from chemical weapons. They left all these out. So there is malice at work here. There is wrongdoing. This is corruption. And then they also go on to say that those videos we saw of chlorine victims being washed and looking like they're being decontaminated were doctored, were fabricated. How do we know this? Because the experts say so. What they also omitted from the report is that the confidence in the identity of chlorine or any other choking agent is drawn into question precisely of the inconsistency with the reported and observed symptoms. The inconsistency was not only noted by the fact-finding mission team, but strongly supported by 3 toxicologists with expertise in exposure to chemical warfare agents. So not only is the team who actually went to the site saying that these symptoms, so-called symptoms of a chlorine attack exhibited by the victims are inconsistent with true symptoms of a chlorine gas attack, you also had 3 expert toxicologists saying the same thing, and they left that out of the report. It's a setup. The whole thing is a setup. But did we really need this? Do we really need this report? Do we really need these leaks from WikiLeaks to know that it was a setup? Anyone with a goddamn brain would have known that this is a setup. How can you believe anything about weapons of mass destruction after Iraq, after 2003, after they lied about those? How can you believe anything else? How can you trust what they say about WMDs? Only a complete moron would have such blind faith in allegations made by Western governments regarding WMDs after that fiasco in 2003. And I remember having a discussion about this with a friend of mine a few months after the fact. And this guy, he's a total centrist. He's a total establishment, sheep. I told him, man, how can you be so naive? Do you really think the Syrian government would do that? They would do the one thing that Obama called a red line. They would do the one thing that would ensure intervention by Western governments. How can you believe any allegations about WMDs after 2003, after they lied about WMDs in Iraq? How can you be so stupid? Have you learned nothing? We know they lied. We know. They even assassinated Dr. Kelly. You remember that? They assassinated one of the weapons inspectors from the IAEA. And you still believe what they say? So now we have the evidence. Now we have the proof. Now we have it from the fact-finding mission themselves, the people who were at the site. And not just one of them, 20 of them, the whole thing. They're all concerned about the lies, about the things that they omitted to craft a false narrative. It's over, man. It's over. And Jimmy Dore was talking about this already. You remember that? Jimmy Dore did so many videos on this. Now we have the evidence. Now we have the proof. You can't deny this. I've talked about the OPCW leaks, which 100% confirmed that this gas attack was falsified. But I also want to present to you a logical argument why strategically, militarily, this gas attack made no sense. So the original claim was that that the Syrian government had used chemical attacks in Douma, okay? Now, like I just said, why would they do the only thing that would assure intervention by Western governments? This is stupid. Everyone has seen what happened in 2003 to Iraq about so-called WMDs that didn't exist. So why would he do that? Why would he do that after Obama said, that's the red line. We have to intervene if we find use of chemical weapons. Only a moron would do that. That would assure that you lose. That would assure that your country is invaded, that your country is bombed. So number one, that makes no sense. Number two, I recall in 2014, Assad gave up all his chemical weapons. Do you guys remember that? After the first alleged attack, he gave up everything. So they don't have any chemical weapons left. And number three, which is the biggest point, which I want to show you now. Douma is a city in the suburb of Ghouta. Okay, Ghouta is to the east of Damascus. It's a very green region, lots of farms, lots of forest-like terrain. And Ghouta was held by the rebels for like almost 8 years. And the Syrian government, they had enough. You'd have rebel groups linked with Al-Qaeda launching mortars into Damascus at civilian areas. Even my cousin's university, for example, was mortared. You had students in the architecture faculty having their legs blown off and killed by rebels, aimlessly, blindlessly launching mortar attacks at the civilian population. So the Syrian government launched an offensive, a huge offensive, in February 2018. So this is 2 months before this chemical attack, to take back the Ghouta region. The offensive was completed on April 14th, 1 week after this alleged chemical gas attack. So the point is, when they say that this chemical gas attack happened on April 7th, 2018, the Syrian army had already taken back most of Ghouta and Douma. Why would they launch a chemical gas attack when they had just taken back most of the area that they're launching an offensive on? What is the purpose of that? They're winning. They don't need to use chemical weapons. So they had already taken back most of Ghouta. It would make absolutely no sense to use chemical weapons in any capacity, not just because of the fear of Western governments retaliating, but just because what's the point of that if you're already winning? It offers absolutely no strategic value. On the contrary, it would get you in trouble with your own population, with the international community. Why would you do that? It makes absolutely no sense. This was pointless by anyone's standards. So not only do we have proof now from the OPCW, from the leaked reports, from WikiLeaks, that this whole thing was fabricated, that they left out evidence, but on top of it, anyone with one brain cell could see that this makes no sense strategically. And on top of it, we know that Western governments lied about WMDs before. They lied on an even larger scale for the sake of invading Iraq, which destabilized the region, which is the whole reason you have this war in Syria now, which is the whole reason you have things like ISIS. There you go, man. There you have it. We have the evidence. And now you understand why they're trying to get Julian Assange. Now you understand why they're trying to imprison him for like 260 years or whatever those charges are. Now you understand why they arrest people like Max Blumenthal on bogus charges and then rough him up a bit and release him and drop the charges. Now you know why they're trying to attack real journalists, because they expose stuff like this.